Hello, gentle viewer. I'm Miles, and this is A Second Look, a channel where we re-examine gameplay and world-building ideas for Dungeons & Dragons. In this episode, we're taking a second look at dragons and how to make them more formidable. Without question, dragons are the single most famous creature in D&D. I mean, it's right there in the name, Dungeons and Dragons. Their image is iconic, a massive ancient monster soaring over the realm, breathing ruin over its enemies, while swords and arrows bounce harmlessly off of their impenetrable scales. A cavern lair, a mountain of treasure, endless gold and jewels piled high like a throne made of greed itself. But at the table, that isn't always what happens. All too often, these apex predators become victims of something far less mythical: the action economy. Sure, their breath weapon is terrifying, but it is usually not terrifying enough to one-shot seasoned, high-level player characters. And then, the dragon's turn ends. On the party's turn, however, the combined forces of the team, 4, 5, 6 sets of attacks, spells, smites, and saves, can shred the dragon's hit points so fast it barely feels like a legend at all. Sometimes it's badly wounded in one round. Sometimes it's outright dead before it even gets a second breath weapon. So what happened? How did the poster child for unbeatable foe become a creature that feels surprisingly beatable? Well, let's take a second look. I guess the best place to start is the beginning. Dragons start as hatchlings, wormlings. The idea of characters finding and raising dragons for wormlings to be companions and pets has been popular for decades. The idea of having an actual dragon at your command is fun and would make the party nearly unstoppable. But getting to that outcome is quite a problem. First of all, dragon hatchlings are not like human babies. They are not helpless. Within hours, they can speak, fly, fight, and use their breath weapons. Often, they're the size of an alligator, and usually smarter than most of the party as well. Evil dragons are not evil because they are trained to be evil. They are evil because that is their nature. Evil dragons are created by Tiamat, queen of the chromatic dragons, and they have no love for humans who believe themselves to be their masters. But they will be intelligent enough to recognize the usefulness of such fools as pawns to serve them, to acquire food, and provide safe shelter while they are simply hatchlings. Like all dragons, they want gold and treasure, so they may as well start with the parties. How a dragon acts will vary largely depending on the type of dragon it is. A red dragon wormling will be extremely aggressive. It will be unruly and refuse to listen. It will throw tantrums and physically attack the people raising it, especially if they show any form of weakness. A blue dragon will constantly challenge and test its boundaries. Give it an inch and will take a mile. They burrow very well, so it may create passageways in the area, as well as a few secret passageways to get out unobserved and explore its surroundings. Green dragons are devious and often smarter than their keepers. It will feign loyalty, but create division in the party however it can. It will mentally dominate the animals in the area, rats, cats, dogs, and birds, whatever, until it eventually can get to the local people and get them under its control. Black dragons will feign loyalty until they don't. They're the most likely to have their keepers poisoned or killed. They relish the opportunity to cause evil in the area and somehow pin it on the party. White dragon wormlings are most like dogs that develop rabies. They will simply not understand any training except abuse and dominance and will eventually kill you or escape. No dragon sees humans as their equals, much less their masters, and will take offense at the idea of being seen as a pet. How it reacts to the offense will differ, from a red or blue flying into a rage to a green or black quietly seething and planning terrible vengeance later. The end goal of the dragon, though, is escape, freedom from its captors, along with their gold, magic, and valuables. The next stage of life for a dragon is arguably the most dangerous, the young dragon. At this stage, it has left the nest, so to speak, and must survive in the world on its own merits. It must lay claim to a territory. Unfortunately, many of the creatures around will not see a young dragon as a serious physical threat at this point. An orc warband will easily destroy a young dragon. A few wyverns, a manticore, a chimera, or a hill giant will defeat a young dragon, forget other older dragons that it may encounter. So how does a dragon at this age not only survive, but thrive? Dragons at this age would find allies. There are always allies who would happily join forces with a dragon of any age. The most common, of course, being kobolds. Kobolds will always serve a dragon of any age, raising it if they must. Evil cults of humans will often ally with younger dragons to help make sure that they survive to adulthood. Young dragons will often ally themselves with various monsters or entities in the area, demanding tribute from local orcs or weaker creatures they can dominate, forming mutual protection agreements with stronger beings. A good example would be a powerful mage wanting to be left alone to study in his tower deep in some forgotten woods. He allows the dragon to reside in his territory, keeping outsiders away and handling problems as they arise, while remaining available to assist the dragon when trouble too big for it to handle raises its head. Confronting an adolescent dragon is one thing, but a few moments later, having to deal with an angry, powerful mage who teleports in to kill the party is another thing altogether. Specifically, green dragons will encourage local fauna and beasts, such as bears, wolves, ravens, alligators, badgers, snakes, owls, and other creatures, to be under the thrall of that dragon. Clans of lizardmen would work together with the beast. A black dragon would hate other living beings. It would be far more likely to have oozes and slimes or smaller monstrous beings in its lair. At this point, it may have started experimenting with controlling the undead, creating skeleton or zombie minions to patrol its lair, or a small horde of ghouls to defend the area. But it's the next stage of dragons where they become a true threat. So often DMs are unsure how to leverage that threat against the players. An adult dragon has managed to survive the vulnerable stage of youth and is now the ruler of all its surveys. But it still needs to overcome that action economy. The first step is not to think of a dragon as a simple monster that will physically fight you. The entire area is now the dragon's territory. If it could not conquer the owner of that territory it now resided in as a young dragon, it will move away. A party of dragon slayers attempting to hunt it down may first come to a town within the dragon's territory. The townsfolk would be friendly and open to that party until they discovered that the party is there to slay a dragon. Then suddenly, the shops would close as characters approach. Vendors would refuse them service. The party would not be able to buy a flagon of ale or even rent a room for the night. Any sign of aggression would risk arrest. If the townsfolk could not convince the party to abandon this foolish quest, they would simply force them to leave. Once the party has left town, they would hear the bells of the local church begin to toll loudly for over an hour, a warning to the dragon and those in the area that yet another party of dragon hunters is on the way. An adult dragon would be centuries old. Every sentient creature in the area would be well aware of the dragon and what it demands. A red dragon would threaten the town with fiery destruction if they did not appease it. It would rule through terror and the promise of annihilation if disobeyed. A blue dragon would rule through a different type of threat. It might kidnap the local baron's maiden daughter, holding her hostage to ensure the locals obey and comply with its rules. A green dragon would rule through subtlety, getting several key members of the community under its power and ruling the town through political manipulation. A black dragon would rule through simple terror, frequent threats of harm, sacrifice, people disappearing in the night. The days it would take to arrive at the lair of the dragon would be plagued with attacks. The party would be expected to survive, but would arrive drained and worn out. Local beasts would harry them. Orcs would attack during the day. Wolves bay and howl loudly all night, surrounding the camp and keeping their players awake. Smaller animals like squirrels would steal items from the party all evening and foul their food. The goal being to keep the party from getting that valuable long rest and making sure they reach the dragon as unprepared as possible. An adult dragon is fearsome in combat. If you think of it not as a stat block, but as a player character, it will have amassed quite a hoard, which includes magic items. The dragon will know what items it has and use them as needed. A ring of invisibility, a wand of fireballs, scrolls, and potions, anything that can prove useful in the dragon's hoard, a dragon will make use of. Another thing to consider is that dragons are centuries, if not thousands of years old, and many have traveled to other planes of existence. They will have collected the items that are unheard of in this realm. Red dragons have possibly spent time in the elemental plane of fire, or even in limbo in the service of Githyanki warbands, fighting across other planes. Green dragons may spend time in the Feywild. Any dragon may have traveled to the various planes of the Nine Hells, even in the presence of Tiamat herself. As a consequence, they would have access to not just different items, but various minions and spells not listed in the various rulebooks. Dragons would absolutely have the ability to cast spells, and older dragons should do so. If you want access to spells your players will not expect, perhaps scroll through older editions of D&D spell lists and modify them to fit the edition you are currently playing. Speaking of minions, an older dragon can and will potentially have dozens, if not hundreds, of kobolds at their expense. I'm sorry. Speaking of minions, an adult dragon often will not battle you alone, but have various minions and henchmen at its disposal. Any dragon can and will potentially have dozens, if not hundreds, of kobolds at its disposal. Kobolds will worship the dragon as a god and serve unquestioningly. Dragons may also align themselves with powerful dragon cults who either worship the dragon or have their own ulterior motives, such as wanting to transform the dragon into a feared Draco-Lich. This means access to priests, warriors, and even the occasional assassin. Dragons will command the service of local monster tribes: orcs, hobgoblins, troglodytes, ogres, trolls, yeti, lizard folk. Find whatever fits the area and the flavor that you want. Red dragons will have kobolds scurrying around like roaches. They will also have fire elementals and salamanders from the plane of fire serving them in their lairs. A blue dragon is the most likely to have a collection of henchmen in its service: a mighty Leonin Echo Knight warrior, a monk from the far eastern realm of Karatur, a small clan of Durgor dwarves, or perhaps an Ungerhulk or Boulay as a pet. A green dragon would very likely have a partially, if not fully, submerged lair, at the very least requiring underwater travel to access it. Giant crocodiles and snakes, water elementals, lizard folk, and perhaps even a water naga at its command. Black dragons hate other living beings. Their lairs would not be conducive to animal life. With so much acid and caustic chemicals in the air, green slimes, black molds, and various oozes would be everywhere. Their lair might be patrolled by gelatinous cubes. A few lower-level demons could be in its service. A horde of ghouls and skeletons and wights may be at its command. A white dragon is less likely to have living minions in its lair, simply because they would be considered dinner. But kobolds would still be around, ever careful to avoid direct contact. It may decide that yeti tastes terrible and allow a clan of yeti to live in its territory, most likely to have its young, and it is also most likely to have young dragons in its lair, smaller dragons to contend with as the party battles its parents. Finally, the experience with the dragon will move to actual physical combat. The dragon, after unleashing spells and its underlings on the party, would engage in combat, but even a red dragon will not just wade in blindly. It understands the characters are capable of killing it and will engage in tactics. Dragons will take advantage of their flight and engage from the sky, rarely landing. Why would it? Snatching a character up only to drop him from hundreds of feet in the air to his likely death, or into a nest of some other local monster. As soon as it's tactically valuable, it will unleash its breath weapon, affecting as many party members as possible. A dragon will do so as soon as possible, and attempt to do so again as soon as possible. A red dragon will absolutely have pools of lava in its lair, either large enough to hide in and then pounce on intruders to grab them and dunk one under, or to stand back and keep opponents out of melee range. It may even splash opponents with lava as a possible lair action. Blue dragons are masters of burrowing and will have traps all around their lair, collapsing floors or ceilings. It may initiate combat by popping out from a wall or up from the ground. The green dragon will absolutely attempt to drown a party member. Preferably a fighter in full plate can expect combat at the bottom of a very deep pool of water. The black dragon may recognize that melee is not where it wants to do combat, and instead fling spells or green slimes and then deliver the occasional bite and claw to an opponent fighting off a pack of voracious ghouls. The white dragon will always attack from stealth, using its frozen environment to its advantage, especially by creating ice walls to separate opponents from each other. So, we have taken dragons from just another tough creature to a creature who plans, uses tactics and magical spells and items against its opponent. It uses the time before the actual battle to help win the battle. It uses the resources of its minions, henchmen, and allies to wear you down before it ever breathes on you. Limiting the action economy against it by changing the battlefield to the air or engaging opponents one at a time in its own environment by separating them either by an ice wall or snatching one and flying a few miles away, or simply overwhelming the party with more bodies, or creating terrifying scenarios that only the dragon can accomplish, like dropping party members from hundreds of feet in the air, or drowning them at the bottom of a lake or lava pit. I hope this has given you some new perspectives and ideas on how to make your dragons a little more fearsome with a second look. I hope you enjoyed the video, and please, if you could punch that like button and subscribe, it helps a lot. Have a great day, and I hope to see you again on a second look.